This video is called Why Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. Is it really that people don't want to work anymore? Or is it that people are tired of working in dead-end jobs that are repetitive, they don't pay enough, and they don't care about their family?
According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are 8.1 million jobs available throughout the United States,
That's a lot of
fueling
jobs.
headlines of a national labor shortage. And yet it takes an average of 6 to 8 months just to land a job.
So just that right there means that there is no labor shortage. It means that people do want to work, but they're having trouble getting hired because these companies aren't taking them for whatever reason. Now, that can be because there's a problem with the hiring process in the first place, or it could be that a lot of people are in oversaturated markets, while other markets, like probably the trades, aren't saturated enough.
With 62% of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck, raising the question, why does society insist that no one wants to work anymore? Well, the concept of work has
I don't think most people insist that. I think it's just like been kind of a buzzword, to be honest.
taken many forms throughout history, predominantly centered on seasonal agriculture. It fundamentally changed with the introduction of the Industrial Revolution, where community driven, task oriented workdays, largely consisting of only 4 to 6 months out of the year, were now replaced by relentless year round factory schedules, demanding 12 to 16 hours a day from people of all ages.
Yeah, I think this is pretty bad, and I'm glad that they came out with like the 40-hour work week. But I would almost say that the 4 to 6 month seasonal working that people did before, they don't really mention that the rest of that time was just trying to survive the winter, uh, which is a lot of people didn't. And that kind of started changing around the Industrial Revolution. So it's not all bad, but it's also not all good, obviously.
Shifting authority from the family setting into centralized factories that introduced rigid hierarchies, tying productivity to physical presence, and stripping workers of autonomy while forcing them into grueling conditions, ultimately leading workers
Yeah, it's really, really repetitive work.
to organize and create the first national labor union under the slogan 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what you will, which prompted President Ulysses S. Grant to sign an executive order in 1869 establishing an 8 hour workday for federal employees, laying the initial foundation that would eventually become the modern workweek.
That's cool. He did this so people had time to buy his cars, by the way.
Meanwhile, conditions in
Everything
the
is
private
driven by
sector
money.
continued to worsen. By the
Unless you're in politics, then it's driven by votes,
end of the late 19th century,
which is also
manufacturing
driven by money.
employees worked an average of 100 hours a week, with some industries demanding even more. The
That's a lot.
dangerous and monotonous nature of factory work left many workers dissatisfied, causing high turnover rates that disrupted production and created significant challenges for employers. It was in this environment that Henry Ford in 1914 addressed an exceptionally high turnover rate of 370% by implementing a strategy of raising wages to $5 per day, more than double the industry standard, while introducing a standardized 40-hour
I
work
make
week,
way more than
as Ford
$5 a
believed
day.
that shorter hours would lead to greater efficiency, as well-rested workers would be more focused and motivated, while higher wages would allow employees to afford the varied cars they built, fostering loyalty and satisfaction among his workforce. And although many critics mocked Ford, predicting his decision would bankrupt the company, the day after the announcement, 10,000 workers lined up for the chance to work at Ford, willing to overlook the monotony of a
Yeah, it's like when Amazon warehouses started getting big and they were like, yeah, we're paying like $17 an hour. I mean, the work sucked, but it was more money than other places were getting.
assembly line tasks for the improved pay and working conditions, stabilizing Ford's workforce and not only introducing the middle class, but setting the stage for FDR's the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938, which officially established the 40-hour work week in the United States and ensured shorter hours, overtime pay, and minimum wage protections for workers nationwide. While this period unquestionably brought transformative changes that greatly improved working conditions and established critical labor protections, It also introduced deep structural issues that a booming post war economy managed to obscure. By the late 19th century, as industrialization continued to reshape society, alongside growing resistance from the working class, John D. Rockefeller established the General Education Board to address the increasing demand for a disciplined and compliant workforce to meet the needs of factory production.
They put people in schools, and they changed school curriculum to make people better factory workers. It's kind of crazy. I wonder how much of an influence that has on today's schools. I know it's less, but
Rockefeller's efforts focused on creating educational systems designed not to foster individual creativity, but to train workers for industrial environments. His advisor and co founder of the GEB, Frederick Taylor Gates, expressed this by stating, "We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers, or men of learning, or men of science. The task we set before ourselves is very simple as well as a very beautiful one: to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life, just where they are." Where by prioritizing productivity and obedience over autonomy, these efforts reinforced industrial hierarchies and laid the ideological foundation
that's some manipulation on a huge scale.
for a labor market defined by control, delaying the recognition of systemic problems that would inevitably resurface.
How was my working life at Ford? I've never been to hell, but heard a lot about it. It was like working in hell. The harassment, the threats, the working conditions, and the continued watching over you by what they had called at that time starmen.
Where over time, these unresolved issues have become
Yeah, they probably had like no individuality. I think a lot of jobs still kind of feel like this. There's like low pay, micromanagement, a lot of stress, and people don't really want those jobs unless they pay a lot of money. I've known people, I know when I was 18, I was looking at being like an underwater welder because I went on Google and I typed in what is the most money I could make without a lot of training. And that was like one of the things. Horrible idea. I'm really glad I never went through with it, but it was definitely something I was looking at because I was driven by money and I was willing to go through things that probably weren't very good for my body just to get that.
become increasingly visible, leaving a labor market constrained by outdated structures and a workforce that feels increasingly disconnected and undervalued, specifically when it comes to the utter disaster that is applying for a job. Unlike previous generations, who predominantly secured
exactly what I
jobs by
said.
applying in person to help wanted ads, the introduction of technology and global competition has fundamentally reshaped how people find work.
I don't think that's necessarily true. Resumes and the way that, well, I'm sure AI has a huge part of it, right? And like computer like identification on resumes and stuff like that, they look for keywords. Before, they were still like you still had to write a resume. You still had to send it in, like even at the verge of the internet when it was first like new. I remember in 2012, I was trying to go around like to jobs and stuff like that, and I printed out a resume and I tried to take it in, and they were like, "No, you have to submit it online." This is not a new concept.
Today, 98.8% of Fortune 500 companies rely on application tracking systems, or ATS, to filter and sort resumes through automated criteria before a human ever reviews them.
That's crazy.
Where up to 75% of resumes are rejected automatically, often for minor deviations such as employment gaps, unconventional formatting, or missing keywords, where these inefficiencies are compounded by a complete breakdown of traditional hiring
I wonder if you could just get AI to write your resume, and it would fix that.
practices. Historically, hiring managers
The
were
employment gap one is crazy, especially like if there's like a woman trying to get a job and she like had an employment gap because she was pregnant. It's, I mean, I guess whatever. She's just not gonna get it. Or like I lost my arm to cancer or something crazy like that. Like they just don't care. We're not even gonna look at your resume, dude.
Closely with seasoned recruiters to craft accurate job postings that reflected the true requirements of a role. Today, this process has shifted to HR departments, where 40% of US companies now outsource most, if not all, of their hiring processes to recruitment process outsourcers, or RPOs, who often rely on subcontractors.
This is a job that shouldn't exist. I think companies should hire within, and they should manage all of this stuff by themselves.
These subcontractors, in turn, use AI tools to draft job postings and screen candidates, with 40% of companies now using AI for initial interactions and preliminary evaluations. Whereas
Also, back on the AI thing, companies claim that nobody wants to work, and then they reject 75% of job applications with robots.
result, job seekers must first pass through the ATS software, then be screened by AI tools, and undergo initial interviews with third party recruiters who often have very little understanding of the company's needs. If they then advance, they face HR screenings before finally meeting the hiring manager, assuming that the company is actually hiring for the role, resulting in a process that takes an average of 27.5 days per role, with only about a third of US companies actually monitoring whether their hiring practices led to good employees. Where this chaotic nature of the system is exemplified by one particularly ironic example. When Sebastian Ramirez spotted a job posting that required 4+ years of fast API, however, Ramirez couldn't apply for this role since he only had 1.5 years of experience.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's exactly how it's supposed to be.
Because he was the actual creator of Fast API. And this kind of misalignment between job postings and reality not only alienates.
And the worst part is if you have a job application like this, honestly, like I would have just put on my resume that I have 4 years of experience in it. Maybe that's illegal, but there's literally no way to get around that.
It's qualified candidates, but also illustrates how far the hiring process has veered from its original purpose, leaving thousands of unemployed or underemployed workers to become completely discouraged with the labor market, if not potentially leaving the workforce altogether, just because of the difficulties in applying for a job. And we haven't even mentioned ghost jobs. According to a workforce analytics firm, Revelio Labs, an online job listing in 2024 is only half as likely to result in a hire as it was in 2020, signaling the explosive growth of ghost jobs as a corporate strategy. Where in a survey conducted by Clarify Capital, 50% of hiring managers admitted to creating ghost jobs to maintain a talent pool for future needs, while 70% reported keeping job postings open for over 6 months.
So companies are posting jobs that they don't want to fill just so that they can collect resumes. And then they complain about a worker shortage.
The illusion is further perpetuated by AI-generated recruiters online,
AI-generated
which engage
recruiters?
candidates with fabricated resumes and work histories under false pretenses. Where a study by the Stanford Internet Observatory uncovered 1,000 fake profiles tied to more than 70 companies, inundating job seekers with
So wait, are they AI generated because they're symmetrical? I don't understand. I guess.
misleading outreach. Resume Genius estimates that LinkedIn alone job seekers with misleading outreach.
That's the same person. The same photo, actually.
Resume Genius estimates that LinkedIn alone may host as many as 1.7 million ghost job postings in the United States alone.
Jesus.
Meanwhile, Standout CV reports that over a third of job postings in the UK remain active for more than 30 days without any hiring intent, highlighting the global scale of this issue. Where ghost jobs also serve another potential avenue to rake profits, as American journalist Bob Sullivan highlights that Equifax, with the help of thousands of HR departments across the country, has built one of the most powerful private databases of Americans' personal information. Weekly contributions from 75% of Fortune 500 companies and 85% of federal agencies include data.
And yeah, it's crazy how they just gave like 3 agencies like complete control over how American money works. What is it? The three credit bureaus or whatever.
such as social security numbers, birth dates, salary histories, and healthcare coverage, while simultaneously recruiting costs remain entirely tax deductible under federal acquisition regulation 31.205-34, as
This is probably why those what is it from earlier, the outsourcing of recruiters exists.
long as a listing meets the technical requirements of a legitimate job posting, which is almost impossible to prove against, which creates billions of dollars of incentives for companies to perpetuate ghost jobs, conduct superficial interviews, and fabricate listings indefinitely, creating
So basically, companies are incentivized to pretend that they're hiring when they're not. So we have a bunch of fake job listings because they get tax credits on them. Wait, let me know if I'm wrong about that. I
a
might be
cycle that not only
misunderstanding.
alienates job seekers, but also leaves thousands of unemployed or underemployed individuals disillusioned with a system that feels rigged against them. Leading me to my final point. Similar to the workers leaving Ford as a result of the monotonous and soul-sucking work of the assembly line, today's workers face a similarly challenging reality. During Ford's era, wages of $5 per day provided workers with a transformative lifestyle upgrade, enabling them to afford homes and cars and financial stability of the middle class that in many ways justified the toll of their labor. Unfortunately, today, the economic landscape has shifted dramatically, where between 1979 and 2024, productivity has surged by over 80%, yet wages increased by only 29.4%, leaving inflation-adjusted wages growing at a mere 0.2% annually. A substantial contrast from the 1950s, where a minimum wage worker could cover a month's rent with less than a week and a half of full-time work. And by 1956, with the federal
Yeah, I think a lot of people are upset about this, especially because CEO pay is like going up by a lot.
minimum wage reaching $1 per hour, equivalent to $11.77 today, it provided enough income to support a two-person household above the poverty line. Today, nearly 1 in 10 US homes were valued at $1 million or more than double the share in 2019, where meanwhile the median home price has reached $420,000, where even the
So you also have to factor in that houses today are over twice as big as they were in the 1920s and like 1950s. Your average house in the 1950s was about 1,000 square feet, and the average house in 2025 is 2,400. And then you also have like differences in household sizes. So like the average household size in 1950 was 3.8, I think. I was actually looking at this earlier today. And the average household size in 2025 is 2.5. So the cost of houses has gone up exponentially. The size of houses has gone up exponentially. And the amount of people that you're putting in these houses has gone down by like a lot. So where's this market coming from? I don't think people actually want bigger houses. I think it's fake.
the cost of college, which traditionally offered career advancement, climbed from $394 in 1970 to $10,560 in 2020, where every single year we all realize that our purchasing power is ultimately less than the year prior, where since the 1970s, the dollar has lost about 95% of its value, making the bare necessities feel completely out of reach for many. And as we begin to conclude, for me to give a topic like this justice, I believe that we have to look at the question, why does nobody want to work anymore? Different than the way that we continuously hear about it and the way that we think about it in ourselves. No matter what, we've all found those times where we're driving on a late Tuesday and traffic is extra heavy, or you're on a walk and you see a bunch of people also walking, and you think, does nobody work anymore? What I'm attempting to do with this channel is to show the ideological reasons we think of work being work, or the reasons that we have led to this point with these systemic issues, with all of these many different components. With this one in particular, the way that I'm trying to get us to this destination is to look at the reason of what it is that the reason why we're doing things. So you buy a car because it's supposed to get you from A to B. So say the Model T, that was incredible. It got you from A to B. But now with all of the many different cars we have, what value is it really providing past the satiated need of just getting me from A to B? The reason that I say that is this whole entire script made me think about that story of the fisherman that all he loves to do is he loves to fish. And he brings his fish home, he feeds his little village or his little community, and that's what he does day in and day out. An American businessman goes over to him and he says, "Wow, it's great what it is that you're doing. You know how much money you can make doing this?" And then he breaks down how if you do this and you sell an extra fish, then you're going to be able to hire an extra person. And with two people, you can do even more fish and you scale the business. And then he says, and then you can retire. What are you going to do when you retire? And he says, "I'm going to fish." And I think I butchered the heck out of that story. But the point of the matter is, when you realize that the for the majority of human history, the way that we are biologically wired is not the way that we work now. And that isn't me just trying to say, oh, everybody should work from home or whatever that people are going to try to project. What I'm trying to say is that the system that we are working at isn't working, and it didn't work 100 years ago. The only reason the workers came back to the Ford factory was because the wage doubled.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think I don't really agree with this. And I don't like the parallel to people not working the way that they did back in like medieval times and things like that. A lot of people did work nonstop from like sun up to sundown every day. And then the people who did work on like fields, like peasants and things like that, they were kind of struggling to survive. Like it's not this isn't like a oh, they had like a perfect life because they didn't have to work and everything was like like we've progressed a lot through society. And I don't think that factory jobs are like a perfect solution for any of this. But I also don't think it's a good idea to like write it off and say like nobody would have come back unless the wages doubled. Henry Ford did that for a pretty good reason. And but I'm not trying to say everything this guy's saying is bull. Like that's just not true.
Now, I guarantee you, for any employers watching, double the wage, you're going to have more than enough good workers there. Now, I would argue that as a nation, we need to be increasing wages. It's unbelievable how stagnated it is. And we continuously keep chopping the feet of our businesses, of our infrastructures, to try to get some level of efficiency or some level of cutting the bottom line to be able to make sure that the stock price is good and whatnot. When in reality, we're forgetting what Henry Ford said. I want to be able to give time to the worker so he can be more efficient and give him money so he can buy my product. We are squeezing this lemon out so tight that soon we're not going to be able to have the ability to consume the products that we're working for. Now, when I talk like that, largely I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the person that has judgments already on this topic. But I feel like what the issue is now is that at some point there was a time in history where you were working maybe for your lord or for whatever, but you were working in the little area that you had granted to you. Work was designated around meal times, with almost always, historically proven, a nap was calculated in there. That is for a fact.
That's funny. Unless you were like a servant or one of the other jobs that probably worked quite a bit more. Obviously, like I'm not as informed on this topic as I should be to actually speak about it like this, but medieval peasants weren't the only job back then. There was a lot more.
Then at some point, we hit this unique stream of economic prosperity
We got
here in the
cell
United
phones.
States. And while work was not necessarily fulfilling, you had the national sense of unity through the Cold War and just coming out of World War II. But you also had wages that could basically buy you anything that you wanted as long as you just literally worked hard and saved money and
Hmm.
sacrificed. Then we come to the baby boomer generation where that begins to deteriorate. The baby boomer generation worked more than the silent generation. And you can see that their priorities started to fixate on the material goods. It was less about the community aspect. Gen X was the first generation that worked less than their parents. And what you can
Well, this is also like the rise of technology, and we had more advertising, and priorities changed, and the culture shifted. Uh, and rather than like being involved with like small communities and things, and those are what's influencing you as a person, now all of a sudden you're being influenced by what the TV tells you, or you're being influenced by what the internet tells you, or what YouTube tells you, or what some asshole named Narek on uh, YouTube is talking about with jobs that people don't want anymore, or whatever.
can see is that this is following in the same historical pattern time and time and time and time again because it's not working. And I think really I'm just trying to give an extra talking point in this discussion of why do people not want to work anymore? It's not people don't want to work anymore. It's that you don't want to work for a job that's paying you nothing. You don't want to go spend all of the time that you have to then come home and eat 5 beans and a Frito because you can't afford anything else. That's just common sense. You also don't want to work for something that maybe you are making good money, but it is so soul sucking, it's unbelievable. I think also we're in a time where we need to be respected more. I think as an individual,
I think a lot of people get up in a trap like that. A lot of people say, "Hey, I want to do this job it's good money, but I hate doing it. But I only have to do it for like so many years because I can actually like retire, I could buy a nice house, and then I can go do something that I actually want to do." And then 20 years later, they're still working in that job because like they don't want to downgrade. It's fear of missing out pretty much. And then they just like they die, I guess. I don't know.
we are being attacked by all of these ideologies, all of these beliefs we're supposed to have, all of these different things that, hey, I kind of just want to be seen as a human being. I just want to be seen like maybe if I know my job doesn't matter, I at least feel like I'm appreciated in
Yeah.
some way. This is going to sound like complaining. I'm not complaining, but when I first got hired at the bank at 18 as a teller, my raise at the end of the year was 10 cents. So a dime,
Yo, it's huge.
0.10. 5 years later, after my first year really performing as a banker, the top producer in my branch, if I wasn't capped. So because I was at a lower tier, I was capped. If I wasn't capped, top producer. My raise was 11 cents, 0.11, a dime and a penny.
Hmm.
The person that had been working there since I was born with kids a month younger or older than me, his raise was 14 cents. So this isn't, I'm being entitled. This isn't an issue with me. This is, hey, we're all getting hosed. And for some reason, it's better to point fingers than to say, hey, we're being hosed. We're all being hosed.
Well, yeah, I mean, wages have also so there's a term, I'm trying to remember what the term was. Basically something millennials and Gen Z started doing recently is jumping from job to job. I forgot what the term was. If you know the term, please let me know. Uh, Jumping from job to job in order to get a new salary, pretty much. So, like, you basically go to a job and they're like, you're going to get $15 an hour here. As soon as you start working at that job, you direct message their competitor and you're like, hey, I'm working here for $15 an hour. If you guys can beat that, I'll go work there. And then that competitor, they offer you 1550. And then you go work there, and immediately, as soon as you start working there, you just keep doing that until you get a wage that you like, which is realistically never going to happen. You're just going to keep upgrading and upgrading until like nobody will upgrade you anymore, and never actually have job satisfaction, which sucks. I don't think that that's a good way to live. I think that if you're gonna do something for a third of your life, you should probably do something that you enjoy. At least try to.
That was one of the reasons why I quit my job. I told my manager, I will never be able to afford a family working here. And he couldn't comprehend it. And that's simply just because of the generational divide. He had that ability to already buy a home. He already had kids. But for me to come out, I can't do anything. I literally can't buy anything. My only hope was creating this channel when I had 500 subscribers. I don't know. I think I've thought about this conclusion so much because I really wanted to give it justice. But something that just keeps reoccurring in my head is that it feels like we're now living in a life with a preconceived agenda that this is what you're going to do. And if you make a slight mistake, or this is what you're going to do, and you have a chance of doing what you want to do, but if you make the slightest mistake, it is so incredibly difficult to not do what you are being forced to do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, love this topic. Love what we're doing with this channel. Got a lot of podcasts coming out soon. Yeah, just gonna keep working hard. Yeah, let's see.
I think he's
It
been venting
is
a little bit, so I'm not gonna really
5:50 in the
say anything
morning.
about it.
I will be getting on another plane here in 3 hours. Light just went out. I don't know. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to keep trying to make a difference. It is needed. I'm going to do the best that I can continuously. One thing I just want to say before I conclude is that I keep getting comments saying, please don't end up becoming like these other YouTubers, which I think is like the illusion of maybe selling out or something. I just want to say, I will never do that. And I promise I am doing this to make a difference, to provide value to the person in front of me. I don't care about it's like that song of what's the point of being rich if you're not like if you're not eating at the table with your friends or something. Butchered that too. But the point of the matter is I want to bring everybody along with this journey. It doesn't matter if I'm making an extra couple whatever. I just want to say that it's important to be stated. Yeah, there's no point in me being successful if everybody else is hurting. So anyway, I'm gonna go get a little bit of sleep, and yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Until
This guy very clearly cares a lot about this topic. So, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'm gonna link this guy's channel and this video down in the description. Let me know if you want to see anything else, and I will see you in the next one.